we're going to be talking about sustainable leadership of tech teams. And to give you some introduction to Rolf, he is a serial entrepreneur. So right out of university in 1999, he started one of the best funded European first wave internet companies, Ciao. In 2005, Rolf started his second company, Trivago, which became within a decade the most successful hotel search and one of the largest consumer global brands. He brought Trivago public at NASDAQ in 2016 and moved lately from his CEO role into a board role. Welcome, Rolf.
Hi, Lisa. Very nice to be with you here.
And you too. Thank you so much for joining us to share your insights. So to kick off, please tell us how you're viewing 2020 and the opportunities in tech.
Yeah, it's a crazy year. Huh? So I think we went already through a lot, and it's probably not over yet. Yeah, so probably not the best, but maybe the worst is even yet to come. Yeah, and yeah, but I'm generally a very, very positive person. So I try to see everything as a learning opportunity, and so I think this year left us with a lot of lessons, actually, for politics, for our society, and so on. And I hope that we go out of it way stronger than we went in. So I think that's what crisis is all about, like personal crisis as well as crisis as a society. So you go through it, and hopefully we all get out smarter than we have been. And I think for technology, it's also I think it's an interesting year. Yeah. So when you're looking at today at technology's stock markets, actually, we see that a lot of tech companies seem to have profited, actually, rather than suffered. And I mean that we now here together, and we're using Zoom is one of these examples. But I think there are many, and I see that also in my portfolio as I'm also investing into a lot of companies. I think we have also a lot of winners, right? And it's quite interesting that how many things progress very fast where we thought they would take many years. Like what happened in schools, for example, is a very good example of that. So I think we went through a challenge, and I think that I think sometimes it's good to be challenged.
Interesting. And so while you were building Trivago, I'm sure you encountered some challenges there, and yet at the same time you had an ethos that underpinned building out your tech team and really sort of, the structure of that company. Can you tell us about the ethos that helped you build out the tech team at Trivago?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to call it the ethos. I'm not sure what is it, except I'm not a native speaker, so I'm not sure what the exact definition of it is. But there is some ethical part in there, and I think it's important to understand, first of all, that this is not about ethics alone, right? So it's also maybe an ethical discussion, but I think it's foremost a discussion of productivity. So it's rather something that we learned over time. So you have to think about as Trivago as a learning system. I think we were never stronger than a lot of other competitors that were in the market, right? So we were not early to the travel game. There were all these giants already existing in there, who were already optimizing for many years when we came in. So I think that so we had to adapt and we had to learn. Yeah, and I think what the way of how we led people at Trivago, how we led engineering teams at Trivago, is a trial and error thing. It's not something that we scribbled before and we were kind of like saying, okay, this is how we want to do it. But rather, we went through a long process. But we went through a long process of iterations. Yeah, and so it developed. And in the process, clearly did not have in mind something like, okay, this is an ideal scenario where we want to go. But basically, it was meant to maximize productivity. And I think that's important. To know when you're looking at this. This is not meant to be something that is because we believe in the good of human beings or whatsoever. It's because we really wanted to create the most productive system. I think both, don't get me wrong, I think both discussions are important. But I think for entrepreneurs also, it's important to understand that this is not something, the way of how we lead is not it's not born out of an idea or out of an ideal image of where we want to go, but rather out of trial and error process.
Very interesting. It's also what everyone says about the entrepreneurial journey. And so as you've moved from obviously the CEO role to a board role at Trivago, and now you have a whole new organization called Leadership.sprouts. Can you tell us about that and what the mission is there?
So as you mentioned, we have an idea of like, we developed over time of an idea of like how we think that productive leadership looks like. And we think that productive leadership today looks very different from maybe 20 years ago. Yeah, and but a lot of the books that are today read are still written many years ago, and especially our idea that we have in mind of a strong leader is it something that is created very long time ago. And we still have this idea of a leader, who defines what to do, who takes us along and who basically like motivates us and, and defines what we should do and so on and so on. So and knows everything, So we still have this idea of a leader and we what we found out is that this old established idea of a leader is, especially in a tech environment, is completely outdated and unproductive. So and why is that? I think it's because complexity of tasks is so rapidly growing, that you cannot basically have the structure of like a commander in chief, somebody who tells you what to do and you go along with it, and it's something that I had to go through, which I learned in a tech environment 10 years ago or so, right? So I think it's something that in the tech world is maybe even more known already for a longer time, or in engineering teams is more known than in generally in the overall management, like how we look at management in general. But for me, for example, it was striking when I led engineering teams, like really like as a young founder, when there were like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 people in our company, right? And I was really directly working with the engineers. And I had been an engineer before, so I was also developing the first versions of Trivago. So the first 2-3 years, I was developing Trivago myself. And then learning to work with the engineers, I learned that it's just not possible to define a task for an engineer. It's just not possible to really control what an engineer is doing. At least on that level, it's not possible anymore. So I think that is something that I really had to understand, and I was struggling with it, because I wanted, of course, as a young entrepreneur, you want to make everybody more productive, and you think, hey, that should be faster, you can do that more quick. You should not take one day for it. It's enough, and if you take 2 hours. And what I did not understand is that I was a problem, in that environment. I did not understand that, through having this kind of attitude, I was slowing everybody down, and I think that was just a really, really, really big learning, where I said, okay, actually, today the only thing that a leader can do is really giving context, giving context and inspire people, bring people as a team together, and tell them why do I think this is a way to go for the company. But then the engineers themselves, they have to commit to something. So giving a task to somebody is something that I do not believe in. I think taking a task, taking an idea, and build something, I think that's how it should be, because only then basically you really have the motivation and you have this productivity. And then we're speaking here about like a 10x, 20x productivity, right? Because like an engineer can perfectly explain you why a specific task takes him 2 weeks, while actually it took him not more than 20 minutes. And you're not able, to tell him he's wrong with that. You're not able to tell him that's not working. It's not possible. So here we see we have to give up with our attitude of controlling, breaking down, micromanaging, and we have to go back to a position of leadership where we give context, where we inspire, where we trying to rather serve people than trying to dictate what they do. And that is not only true for engineering teams, that is true for any leadership situation, And I think when you're looking at going back to where we are today in 2020, I think when you're looking at the different leadership systems and you see like who's coping with that pandemic in a better or worse way, I think it's very interesting, what kind of leaders are coping with that very complex situation in a better way. And I think we see that the simplified stereotype of a strong leader, like showing us the way, and marching forward and with all the bravery and so on, and what you expect from a leader, that's simply not working anymore. You need people who bring teams together, who are able to connect people with each other, to find out strengths, to see strengths in people, and to really combine all of those and build really diverse teams. So I think the times where one person is able, a genius is able to change the way the world is working or make it way more productive, I think these times are over, and if not today, then they will be in a couple of years.
Fascinating. And you mentioned building diverse teams, and that's obviously something you're passionate about, and one of the Heidi principles, which we all know that you are also sort of committed to. So can you tell us, in 2020, it's obviously been a very big year for diversity. How do you believe leaders and CEOs now can take on that challenge of building a diverse team, of being committed to diversity in tech?
I think the most important for productivity is the diversity in thought. The thing is that basically we all carry our legacy, we all carry our story with us, right? So when we're looking at a problem, we see it through our lens, through our perspective, and it's not possible to change that. So we can think of ourselves as people who are very unbiased, but we all carry our bias with us. And I think the first important thing is to accept that this is true. So we have a history, we have made experiences in our lives, and that's why we have a very specific view onto the world. So and the only way to get rid of those biases is to confront us with people who have their own and hopefully very different biases. So we should, if we talk about diverse teams and diversity of thought, then we should also think about diversity of stories. So how can we get diverse stories into a team? And that's the way how you think about it. And then of course, our stories are different, depending on like what's our origin, right? So our origin defines a lot like where we're coming from. Of course, our gender defines where is an important indicator. But at the end, it's just an outcome. If you want to go for productivity, it's diversity of thought, diversity of stories, and that's what I'm looking at. So if I want to invest into a team, I look, do they really have different stories? Have they had different experiences? Because I know when they then clash together, then I know they can come out, they can learn from each other, learn from each other's stories, and they have just way more perspectives on the same problem. And I think that is important in this world. Like we are in a world of polarization, and we don't realize that the most productive way to move forward is to break this polarization and share our stories and share our perspectives.
Fantastic. I think that maybe, do we have time for one more question? Or I think that maybe all we have time for today, but that was fascinating and certainly very insightful about leadership and building tech teams in 2020 and beyond. So thank you so much, Rolf.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.